if you haven't been on like the Slim Jim Discord, I would say that is probably one of the best examples of why democracy can still work in the world. And I think, it's an interesting thing in that it's basically for what are prepackaged tubes of meat. They've come up with a really good way to go like, hey, the Long Boy Gang, the Long Boy Gang for life is, an equitable society where everyone has a bit of an input.
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS, the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career. All right, here we go. Mr. Chad O'Connor, how you doing?
All right, looking forward to this one. How are you guys?
We're good. We were just talking about, as you heard, that we're no longer in the sunny south of France. Some of us are happy about that, but we don't have the eyewear.
C'est la vie, I think, right?
Well, listen.
With the extent of my French.
Well done. I appreciate you making the time to come on the show. So we worked on your introduction. Let me see if I can get this right. Chad O'Connor, adjunct professor of marketing and communications at Northeastern University in Boston.
You got it.
Nailed it.
Keep all my cruel overlords at Northeastern happy. I have too many of them to count. So,
all right, Jenna, how you doing? Sunglasses back on?
I do still have the eyewear for the south of France, but it's very overcast today in New York. So these were don't talk to me sunglasses, not sunshine sunglasses today.
I was thinking, I think we should make the Stefan segment. I think we should make that a segment. Can we do a Stefan segment every week? But you actually have to put time into it to come up with the things you want to say. Let's do that at the end. I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, and then let's make that a regular thing going forward.
Okay, sure. That was
I just think that the monkey that calculates your CPMs was I don't even remember what the other ones were, but it's great.
The DSP that somehow acquired the launch codes. That was a pretty good one. That's probably a thing. Yeah. All right. Don't talk to me.
Dubose, how are you?
I'm good.
Fresh off have you won 2 out of the last 3, by the way?
I won 2 out of the last 3. I didn't want to call attention to it, but yeah, I'm feeling quietly confident.
All right. Well, Chad has told me that he's already bringing the heat. He texted me earlier to say, what was it that you said, Chad? Just so we're clear, you're getting unfiltered me tomorrow morning, swearing, mean jokes, and all. So looking forward to that. Chad, you're going to fit right in.
I just want to make sure I could work blue. You don't know, I didn't know if you would be surrounded by the little kids or something like that this morning. So, sometimes that's a problem.
No, Jenna scared them all away, along with most of our viewers. But all right, let's get into it. So 3 stories to go through today. The first is the $100 billion media opportunity for retailers. We're going to talk about retail media, something that one of us is very excited about, and I'm excited to learn more. Second story, how TikTok became a bestseller machine and other TikTok stories that we will get into. And then lastly, why brands are obsessed with building community. I don't have anything in the grab bag today, but I'm sure we will come up with some other things to talk about if we do get through these stories in time. Let's kick it off. So, story number 1 coming to us from our friends at BCG Consulting, the $100 billion media opportunity for retailers. So big retailers are already racing towards a $100 billion high margin annual revenue prize in retail media. Structural shifts in the advertising marketplace and most recently in digital advertising have created the opportunity for retailers to become highly effective channels for marketing dollars. Amazon has already grabbed a huge leading share with some estimates as much as they're doing $26 billion in 2021 revenue for their ad division. Jenna, obviously, going to start with you. You surfaced this article. You've posted retail media in all caps, at least once a day in our general Slack channel for the last couple of weeks. So what is all the excitement about? Please elaborate.
You did neglect to leave out, though, that I've only just said retail media in all caps and then had no other follow-up thoughts to that other than it really feels like I should think about this a lot. So I really feel put on the spot here that I have not developed a.
You had no idea it was coming, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. I think this is a really exciting one because I think that this is finally a legitimate challenge to the duopoly of Google and Facebook, right? I mean, how long have we seen like digital ad budgets get divvied up where like 80 to 90% of spend is just going to Google and Facebook. But I think especially is with the death of the cookie, and like I really I'm gonna have to get like a swear jar for that phrase, like the death of the cookie. But
we've already got Duboz's swear jar for Metaverse, so we're gonna have a lot of swear jars soon.
We can fund the company retreats with them. We can continue to get really incredible villas and cool places with our swear jars. But no, I think that with changes in privacy and tracking capabilities on, like I said, like Google and Facebook, like retail media owners, or again, like just like anybody who owns any consumer data that is predicated on like behaviors and like declared behaviors rather than PII necessarily. Obviously, Amazon has both. And also, if you think that I fucking hate TikTok, I really fucking hate Amazon. So I'm looking forward to ranting about that.
It's a new one.
Yeah, I'll introduce new ones into rotation over new characters over time. But yeah, I think it's just a fascinating development for me, I think.
So let's take a step back for a second. Retail media, give us the 101 overview.
Retail media is basically where large consumer retailers like Walmart, Target, Amazon essentially have advertising space like on their own properties, like their like e-commerce sites or whatever else, but also through their customer email channels, right, where they'll like send promotional emails to folks who've signed up to their mailing lists and a lot of other things. Amazon obviously has the most diverse amount of inventory, right, where it's like they've got stuff on Amazon Prime Fire, the .com, the e-com site, but a lot of other things as well. And essentially, advertisers can buy space. Much like they can like on Google and Facebook, but then also, look at partnerships and promotions and quite a few other things. Amazon's ad ecosystem is, significantly more diverse, I think, than even Facebook's. And they're investing a lot into their capabilities there.
So a lot of the conversations that we've been having, particularly with CPG direct to consumer brands recently, has been, how do I navigate the post iOS 14, post cookie type of world? I had a conversation today, I actually recorded an episode of Scratch. My CPAs have gone up 300% from where they were 2 years ago. So basically this retail media opportunity, there's obviously an opportunity for retailers to monetize more of the attention they already have, but also for businesses potentially as a new channel or a channel to invest more in now that they're getting less out of the kind of the social direct response digital spend compared to where we used to be. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that almost all verticals, but I think because especially within CPG products like this are going to have to move very quickly, like I say, away from like PII data collection based like ad spend, which is functionally what Facebook is, and more into behavioral and intent based or contextual placements, which is much closer to what retail is. It's again the most obvious for folks who actually will have partnerships and distributions within like these retail networks, but it is going to be increasingly a prerogative for everybody, basically, I think.
I feel like somebody might be doing a virtual workshop on first party data management. You heard about that?
I did hear something about
Jenna
that.
Cummings from Punchy? I think it is.
Be.
Yeah, July.
Yeah.
July 21st.
It is the 21st. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So one other thing, and then Chad, I'm going to come to you. So there was one line in the story that says, we've projected that one airline could generate up to $100 million in additional media revenue with an average profit margin of 75%. So my question to you, Jenna, is this all just one big ploy so that you can finally buy your plane wrap?
I just want to buy a plane wrap. But I feel like you actually wouldn't really even be able to buy that like programmatically, like on like the way that you can buy like most like retail, like like Target's like network like Roundel is like actually like a fairly like advanced like digital operation. Plane wraps I feel like will always be firmly within booked reservation buys. I don't know, but you gotta maybe I'm going after it at a lot of angles. Yeah.
I don't know, like I've seen the box trucks that they have now that have all LED displays so that they can do that. So your plane wrap being a digital display is probably, a thin layer of technology away, Jenna.
Yeah, and that it blinds other pilots. Who cares? Who cares, right? It's a small price to pay for. I want to buy a plane wrap.
I mean, that counts as an impression. A blinded pilot is still an impression.
That's an impression.
Only if it's like 1.5 seconds of blindness, and then we've officially hit the threshold.
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's frame of the plane.
It's funny, I think, when we talk about different sectors and how you can start to become more of a media company as different brands. I think, like retailers, obviously, there's large amounts of trust versus some other bits. You've always seen that retail media has higher trust than a lot of paid media placements. But I think the interesting thing is, as much as we may feel negatively about something like Amazon, I think retailers still, on the whole, have more positivity than other sectors like airlines. I think it is funny when you start to think about the context of some of the placements that you may buy. And for anyone who's ever flown Ryanair or flown EasyJet, I think some of those placements probably aren't considered as the most positive places to put your brand. So I think it probably is a sector by sector opportunity.
All right, Chad, any thoughts on this from your seat as the adjunct professor of marketing communications at Northeastern University?
So I guess part of my like fear on certain things is that like I thought we were all supposed to be going towards this like more privacy centric contextual, like you don't need to get this data gathering on me, and it just seems like one nice big more money grab for a lot of retail space, right? And so if you're telling me like originally the push was to get everyone to sign up for these subscription services so we could have dependable revenue and that'll look great, and now you still want to pimp my data for that, like I'm sorry, I'd rather just know that it's like you're in this aisle and we can serve you ads about things that are related to the stuff in this aisle, as opposed to actually having to know I'm in the aisle and my behavior is triggering that thing. Like you don't need to know about me. You can still know just about like the context of what's there and do it in the retail space. And I'd still feel like, I guess, passively okay with it. It's just my fear about like my app is getting iBeacon pinged every time I'm walking through this damn place because you're trying to steer me towards the one thing that someone is paying to promote and trying to relentlessly target me on. And I think to your point about like having trust in the retail space, it'd be like until we get some invasive kind of feeling stuff around things, like you probably don't at like necessarily a Walmart or a Target, but you will at like a CVS or a Boots when you're just like, oh, okay, so they realize you've bought condoms and hemorrhoid cream, jump to your inference data about what that's going to mean and like what kind of targeting is that going to get you.
I mean, you kind of think, but retailers and trust is kind of the old mule with the spinning wheel thing. Like there's probably a chance they'd figure out how to use it well, but for the most part, it's probably just going to get smashed. So I think there is that idea that
what?
It's like a mule with a spinning wheel.
This stuff up.
That is an actual quote from the monorail episode of The Simpsons. So
it's all Simpsons references.
Yeah. A town with money is like a mule with a spinning wheel. No one knows how he got it, and damned if he knows how to use it.
I think we have our episode title. All right. I think that we should move on. Although, Jen, I do have to ask, why the hate for Amazon?
Oh, we just don't have time. We'll do a separate.
I left it purposely broad.
Do you segment, Jenna? Do you segment your hate around like Jeff Bezos and his phallic rocket versus Amazon the company, or is it just like it's all bundled into like one rage?
I mean, it's like it has nuances at both ends of the spectrum, you know what I mean, right? But I think it's like largely Amazon as a company. Amazon as a company is too large to exist. I can't, but like I need zombie Roosevelt to come back and do some fucking trust busting, my man. Like
sure. Well, but then on the other hand, like earlier when you were talking about like ending the duopoly, like that's not going to help your trust busting case. When all of a sudden these guys are like, oh, we have all these other advertising options available, then they're going to like get off our back trust busters. It's like
not in the US. I think that Europe. See, this is what I mean. We could have a whole episode about this.
Yeah, we gotta hope Europe does it, right?
Yeah.
So I will say last thing. I was having a conversation with someone who is joining the Amazon advertising business, and obviously I won't go into specifics.
Protecting the innocent.
I mean, it's much bigger than people realize, and read some of the stats off already. They have very, very big plans. Like they are just getting started. All right.
Thumbs down, bad news.
Moving on, Jenna, I feel like that was your show. So I'm going to give you 9 points. Chad, well played, 7 points. Dubose, I'm going to give you, I think, 5 points, unless you can get Queso to come back on, and then I'll give you double points for each round. Moving on to story 2, how TikTok became a bestseller machine. So I partially put this in here just to get a rise out of Jenna, but early last year, the publishing industry began to notice that books readers were gushing about on TikTok were actually leading to significant sales. So a year later, the hashtag book talk has become a sustained and powerful, I'm missing a word there, I think it's sales driver. Let's go with that. So for example, one author became a sensation on TikTok, and she's now one of the best-selling authors in the country out of nowhere. And it's now one of the most commanding forces in adult fiction, with authors selling 20 million printed books in 2021, according to Bookscan, just from the hashtag book talk. So let's mix it up a little bit. Chad, starting with you, how do you feel about TikTok as a sales channel and hashtag book talk specifically?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, like in that piece, there was something I remembered about Barnes and Noble doing a book talk kind of thing, trying to have like a summer reading challenge for the partnership. And I was like, I'm interested. Barnes and Noble is still around, other than just selling textbooks to kids, because that's all I'm used to in my universe. It was like, well, look at you all. But like, if we're just talking about like the TikTok push towards book things, like, please just tell me this is not the genesis of the next great Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter or Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies kind of bullshit. Like, if that's where we're going in the fiction universe, that we need this to be the thing that gets upwelled because of TikTok, just like count me the hell out. But like, I just want to know, like, can we fuck with this algorithm to just piss China off more? Like, if you can tell me we can get Sam Huntington's Clash of Civilizations trending in book talk, or like tell me what book talks are trending in Hong Kong, which there aren't any because Beijing probably won't let them, then absolutely, like, sure. But like, otherwise, I'm out. Count me out.
Tubos?
I mean, it's less toxic than Goodreads, so there is that. But like, I think with everything that it's funny whenever there's a conversation about a sales driver element of a community on a social network, because I think it's funny that we always seem to rediscover the idea that people who care about something go on places to talk about the things they care about. And then we've now asked ourselves, how do we deal with this new development? And I think, it's interesting because TikTok, to the algorithm point, is incredibly good at clustering people together around the interests they have. And so naturally, book talk is going to be something that is going to expand, especially given that it's one of the more general communities on TikTok, given, unless you've seen like goth summerwear talk and experimental Mexican food fusion cooking talk. Like, I think the idea is that at a certain point, I think the question here isn't how do you tap into book talk. It's, I think, as you mentioned, Chad, what's the logical conclusion of this? Is it the idea that it becomes so commercialized the community wants to walk away from it and starts to move on to something else? Or is it the idea that the community seems to take the wheel of the car, which at a certain point is only going to end up with us driving into a ditch of terrible book concepts that have mostly been crowdsourced off TikTok? So
Mao and Xi fan fiction is probably where we're going.
Exactly. Like, you could basically just go Twilight fanfic plus, and you're going to have something there pretty quickly. So I think, it's an interesting one. It shows the value of TikTok, the other conversations we're having about it aside, in community sourcing things they care about. But I think, you could basically close your eyes, pick a year, and there's going to be a different platform that in some level of performance has been doing this exact same thing.
Jenna?
Fun fact, my first real job was in publicity at the publishing house that did Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter and was in down the hall from the Twilight books. For real. That is for real true. I worked on that book. I straight up worked on that book. So I guess I do have like the unique insight that that's already how they develop books, is basically like, because it was the same publishing house down the hall that did Twilight, and they were all kind of like on like the theme a little bit. They did Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter and all those other things. So I don't care about this. This is how publishing works. Whatever the fuck, they just find like whatever the flavor of the day, rabid like fan bases. You notice that all the books that they essentially mention in this like adult fiction are all like romance or kind of like the beach read kind of deal that are aimed at primarily a predominantly female audience. I still fucking hate TikTok. I don't care about this.
So should we go to the articles that you really wanted to talk about, which are the FCC commissioner calls for Apple and Google to ban TikTok, and TikTok confirms that China-based employees can access U.S. user data.
The GIF of It's Will Ferrell and Zoolander. Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I thank God this has finally been printed and people have acknowledged this, because I'm like, I feel like I've been taking crazy pills that people have not acknowledged that obviously China has had access to US user data. Duh. No doy. That's what I wanted to talk about. No doy. Yeah.
There's a rigorous approval process, right? Like I saw that whole thing. I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm sure. Highly rigorous.
Sure, yes, very rigorous. Rigorous has no value judgment. It may just be that there's 30 party officials that all have to approve the same document. That would be a really rigorous process.
Yeah.
National security jokes.
I mean, this goes back to like things I always hate to say, like I have to agree with. It was like this is crap that goes back to the Trump administration beating that Bush, and it was just like, I hate being in the same companies, y'all, but I get it. Like it is what it is.
The worst person you know just made a really good argument. That is the worst.
Yeah, it's a bad feeling. It's a bad feeling.
I don't know. I will say that like we posted the one about like the FCC commissioner like is pressuring Google and Apple to just ban the app. I think that that's a ridiculous fucking cop out, and the government has no business.
Well, they don't actually have any authority to make them do that. The FCC.
I mean,
I understand it from the article.
All right. I don't necessarily know what the full extent of the regulatory limits of the FCC are off the top of my head, but they do broadly regulate the industry, right? And like it is possible that they could do something, but I don't think that they have any basis saying like, well, you have to ban such and such other legally operating private company like from their stores. I'm really taking a significantly more anti-government opinion these days since the Roe decision was handed down. I've really done a little bit of a turn on this. So I don't really know what the answer is, but brands who aren't on TikTok shouldn't be on TikTok. There, said it again. There we go.
It is interesting though. Again, like the conversation that I had earlier today with this direct-to-consumer CPG challenger, like that's where they're going. That's where they're doubling down after their CPAs have gone up 3x. Like they're seeing the opportunity there. They're seeing the business results there.
I mean, it's the thing, right? Like they've stacked case studies across the US and the UK at least of really good growth for Little Moon's Mochi in the UK, running around basically talking about how they basically created the mochi category on TikTok. So I think, mutually exclusive, it can be something where you're like, data wise, this is incredibly worrying, but also it sells a load of little ice cream balls.
Yeah.
So
that's what it is. All right, moving on. Story number 3, why brands are obsessed with building community. So the phrase building community, it seems, was being deployed more frequently by startup founders in their respective brands rather than actual members of one. Virtual spaces, communities is shorthand for interaction. So this is becoming more and more of a thing. Looking at fitness companies like Peloton, beauty and fashion brands like Glossier and Victoria's Secret. And also, like we've talked about and actually studied, Dubose, with some of the research that you led, this is increasingly a thing, particularly with challenger brands. So Dubose, I'll obviously bring this one to you first. Why are brands so obsessed with building community now?
Because they don't actually understand what community means 80% of the time. I think the interesting thing here is, and looking at the article, I think a lot of the way that brands are defining community is more, how can we get people to listen to more of us? It's not really adding any value beyond speaking to people. I think, a brand's view of community is that annoying person who comes to a dinner party and then wants to do a reading of something or to give a quote of something. And you kind of go like, that is the model we're operating on right now. That's never actually happened to me, Jenna, but I assume at some point I will become fancy enough it will. But I think, the interest, I'm kind of torn. Like, I think there'd be cravats, there'd be quotes of Byron. The entire thing would be lovely. But I think, the challenge here is we have to define what we mean by community to build something that's actually effective for it. I think a lot of the time we're still talking about audiences. We're still talking about fans. And that is not an equitable term for bringing people together to create an experience for them. What you're doing there is really hoping to find a cheaper way to make a captive audience. And I think a lot of the time, those types of communities predicated on content consumption, watch my ad, here's 3 other things we've done. Those are costly to kind of keep up, and they don't have a longevity. Then when we look at certain brands that are doing much more of okay, we've created a platform, we've created a space we've created tools. You tell us where you want to go. You have a bit of an equal stake in how we're kind of creating this experience of this platform. I think that's where you're getting true ownership. I think it's funny. I never thought I would say this, but if you haven't been on like the Slim Jim Discord, I would say that is probably one of the best examples of why democracy can still work in the world. And I think, it's an interesting thing in that it's basically for what are prepackaged tubes of meat. They've come up with a really good way to go like, hey, the Long Boy Gang, the Long Boy Gang for life is, an equitable society where everyone has a bit of an input. And I think that's interesting when you compare it to something like Peloton, which, at the end of the day, Peloton isn't a community, it's a country club. And there's a very fine point to that, in that, yes, you can complain about like your experience on Peloton, but not much happens. At the end of the day, it's still just a gated business. And I think we have to define the difference between what is a gated audience or business and what is an actual community to kind of talk about how brands can build community effectively.
Sorry, are you suggesting that Slim Jim is making changes to their product and business model on the basis of the feedback that they get in a Discord? Because I don't think that that's true. I think that they're still going to make tubes of meat and sawdust and spice. I feel like
I think, well, but I don't think anyone's called for the opposite. Like, I think of the millions of people in the Long Boy Gang, no one is saying stop making delicious Long Boys. Instead, they're like make more if you can.
Am I in the right place right now?
I'm just like trying to wrap my head around like Long Boy Gang is not like euphemism for being a size queen or something like that.
No.
There's
it's
just
like
that's just like
long boys.
There's like a Slim Jim Discord saving democracy. Like there's just a lot to unpack there.
Like like bourgeois dogs. Like those are like Long Boy dogs because they're really long.
I think this is something you should add to the Discord. I'm just saying, like, these are things that everyone else needs to know.
Yeah. All right.
What were we talking about? Community.
Right. Communities. Point taken, though. But don't you think that like the bigger disparity is not between the Pelotons and the Slim Jims of the world, and talk about two brands on the polar opposite side of a conversation?
But nothing satisfies after a long Peloton ride like a Slim Jim. Yeah. So
I will say, but Slim Jim is apparently very unique in that like there aren't like other people who make tube meat like long boys. That there's something about Slim Jims that are uniquely different. Like the Europeans say like we have these snacks in Europe, but something that they do for Slim Jims like is different or whatever. Like Peloton has a point of difference. Isn't like the bigger problem that 95% of brands just have no functional hope of like ever creating a community because they just don't have anything like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like most brands just can't do the community thing. And I always think it's really weird when we spend this time talking about like how important it is like to build this, when it's like most brands can't do this. I think
most are going to have to work at it. But I think at the end of the day, there are two things we can always hold true. A brand always has a purpose at the heart of it. Otherwise, it's a generic product. And I think that purpose can always be extrapolated to add value to someone somewhere. I think the question for most brands isn't, can you foster a community? The question is, how big could that community be? Like at the end of the day, Domestos Bleach going, we're gonna make the clean gang of kind of people who believe that everything has to be sparkling clean is probably going to be a very hard thing to scale. Although, as I said it, I instantly think they should do it. But at the same point, like, there are sectors that already have social cachet, already have got like Nike at the end of the day effectively creates communities pretty much wherever it goes, or it taps into them and enhances them. So I think, as long as there is a brand purpose there is a question around, okay, now what does that brand purpose look like if other people engage with it, carry it, spend time with it? And then I think it's just a question of scale.
Cobbling together the bleach community is like moms with cleaning tips and people trying to cover up their crime scene who need those cleaning tips. Like that's where this community exists, to share tips on like, oh, how do you get the bloodstains out kind of thing. Like,
imagine that Slack channel,
right?
It's like Dorothy.
That could be mine for yeah. Absolutely.
And, an anonymous hitman from New Mexico, both chatting about the idea that it's a little bit of bleach and a little bit of sparkling water, and it comes right out.
Let's get coffee next time you're nearby, kind of thing. I'm sure.
Exactly.
But I think it is, just because it's hard to do doesn't mean that brands shouldn't be thinking about doing it. My thing with community is it takes such a sustained, intensive effort to do it right, to create something out of nothing where there's enough value that people actually want to come and interact around whatever it is that your brand stands for. And most businesses, and we talk a lot about this with like content marketing and the media company model, they're not focused on, or they're not in a position or not willing to focus on that one direction of value towards the audience, towards the community. And that's required to do the media company model right. And I think even more so to actually build a community. But if you can do it, it's incredibly defensible as long as you sustain it and continue to feed it. Now I'm just hungry talking about Slim Jim and feeding communities. But I think there is a huge opportunity with this stuff. And I think increasingly you see more and more challenger brands kind of being born with this at the core, but it does take an incredible investment to actually do it right. And a lot of businesses, particularly incumbent businesses, aren't in a position to do so.
Yeah, I know, like going back to DeBose's kind of earlier point about brands who just don't do this right. I just feel there's probably like a big sense of some brands define community almost as like that freeloading relative you have, where they occasionally hit you up for a few bucks and tell you how nice you look today. And it's like, you're only using me for like, the $10 you need to borrow here. And then like the community is just like, please keep us around because we need jobs. Like there's just not a real actual loyalty and affinity and sense of being special in there, like the quote heart of the brand. But then I also remember like in the article stuff, there's about Pink, like the Victoria's Secret Pink trying to do the empowering campus community. And it was like, girls, please Google for 5 minutes the L Brands shit that they got dragged for on the corporate side of just how not good to women they were. And this is the group that you want to trust to run an empowering campus community for you. Thanks, but no thanks, right? Like there's just no credibility when I see that.
Unlike Slim Jim's credibility on egalitarianism.
They know meat.
It's the people's food. Just saying. Unless you're vegan, in which case it is not the people's food.
It is not the meat for you, yeah.
All right. On that note, we're going to have to wrap it up. I don't even know what to do with points on that round. I feel like there were lots of points to go around. It really comes down to who do I want to hear rant or rave about something. Chad, did you come up with something that you want to rant or rave about? Otherwise, I'll give it to somebody else.
No, I will gladly defer to someone else who's like got something.
I'm not saying you won. I'm
about.
just curious. No.
I'm just saying
I haven't awarded the points yet.
Fine.
Dubose, I want to give you the points, but also you've won a little bit too much. So I'm going to give it to Jenna here. 15 points for Dubose, 10 points for Chad in that last round, and 17 points to Jenna, just to make the math add up. Jenna, you're our winner. What do you want to rant or rave about?
I want to rave about the Radio Shack Twitter. Oh, have you guys seen the Radio Shack Twitter?
No, it's a thing.
Oh, yeah. It is the final evolution in the like brands being like quirky and like approachable and trying to do like slightly edgy like millennial humor. Like, when Wendy's like was it Wendy's at Dubose that was like the first kind of like edgy, like started calling people out. Yeah. And so Radio Shack is
this is all the hawk crypto now, right? Like that's the other thing.
Yes. And we've gone so far now where it's like the pendulum has swung so far that it's like, I'm not sure if this is satire or completely 100% earnest with how like it's like filthy and aggressive and like just completely ridiculous.
They had some tweet about like the second like eating the second edible a half hour after the first or something like that. It was things where I'm like, what late stage capitalism are you in? I totally feel you.
This is up there with like the Duolingo TikTok, huh? In terms of ridiculousness.
A little bit, but like the Duolingo thing, I think is a little bit like earnest, or like it's a little like there's some surrealist kind of elements like in the Duolingo thing. This Radio Shack, which is I do love that about Gen Z. I love how like surreal and like absurdist they are. We're gonna get some crazy good surrealist art out of this generation. It's gonna be great. But the Radio Shack Twitter feed is just like in your face, like Phil. I don't know if we can say this, but there was one that they put. It was like, if you find a squirter, marry her. Like it's just so like completely off the rails, like ridiculous. It's really good.
I hadn't been to a Radio Shack in a very long time, but it has really changed. So
it's just kind of the perfect, like, if you were to write like a plot line of, like, again, like what happens like with a brand Twitter feed, it's like, brand that there's significant 90s nostalgia about, comes out of retirement, is really aggressive and tries to talk like a real person and is hawking crypto. Like, it's just the perfectly scripted branded experience of 2022.
the natural evolution of this is Sunny Delight coming out as the drink of the alt-right next week, as just there's some literature I want you to read, and you're like, and also rollerblading.
Yeah.
Like, that would just be, for the record, Sunny Delight is not the drink of the alt-right. It is delicious.
You heard it here first. All right, before we wrap up, Jenna, or should I say Jafan, what is the marketing industry's hottest club right now?
No, okay, we'll start next week. You got to give me some time.
All right, next week.
Yeah.
Prep it ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Chad, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully it was entertaining.
I was glad. No, I was glad to be here this week on a week in which Jenna did not violate a book or something like that. Like, I just felt awful that you were just so mean to Queso, and Queso, I don't know.
Is a furry little asshole. It's gonna come out. I will be vindicated over time.
I saw him last week on camera, and he did not look to be asshole at all.
I think I'm
Ted
long on
Bundy
Queso. So
Ted Bundy was handsome too. Okay, I don't.
Are you saying Queso is like Ted Bundy?
Yes.
lures people in, knows how to read the eyes.
It's
kind of it.
100%. That's exactly Queso.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right. That's all we got, and probably way too much. But I'm going to hang up now, and we'll see y'all next week. Thanks, Chad. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chad.
Punchy is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with Jenna, Dubose, or myself, email us at media@wearerival.com or find us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.